I'd like to call to order the City of Saugatuck City Council Workshop Meeting for October 8th, 2025. Jamie, will you call the roll?
Anderson,
Here.
Clark,
Here.
Dean, Gardner,
Here.
Muncy,
Here.
Peterson, Stanton.
Here. I get a motion to excuse council members Dean and Peterson from today's meeting.
I'll make a motion to excuse Councilmember Scott Dean and Councilmember Chris Peterson from today's workshop.
I'll second.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any changes to the agenda? All right, that brings us to the first public comment period. Anyone is welcome to speak to anything that is on the agenda for this afternoon. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak? Anyone online wish to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 22nd?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular city council meeting minutes from September 22nd, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion or questions before we vote? It's a voice vote. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Any opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to discussion items. Page 7 is road and parking lot resurfacing bid. Thank you for joining us, Scott.
Thank you for having me, Madam Mayor, Council. So as part of our, we hear about this annually, so as part of our ongoing maintenance of our street surfaces out there, one of the activities that we perform is mill and overlay work, or milling off that. First we identify roads that don't have major underground utility needs, first and foremost, and then we just do a condition assessment of the road surfaces, and ones that we deem that do have decent underground utilities and don't have any foreseen repair needs. We can go through and mill off that top 1.5 inch layer, sometimes a little deeper, get into the base layer if necessary, but mill off that top layer of deteriorated road surface and relay a fresh coat of HMA asphalt. So Fleece and Vanderbrink, as well as the Department of Public Works, we did our assessment this year, this fall actually, and we're able to identify some roads that would qualify for this type of road treatment. So at Lucy Street, there's a small section just east of Butler Street, in between Lucy, on Lucy between Butler and Holland Street. There's a short section that's in pretty rough condition. If you think back to around 2020 when we had high water levels, some of that high water did reach all the way back to that intersection at that time. So still kind of contending with some of those damages that occurred at that time. So in addition to that, we identified that the Wicks parking lot also experienced heavy saturation during those high water levels. And there's a lot of settling and saturated base layer of that parking lot. So we would like to recommend having that Wicks Park parking lot repaved as well. And then as I think everyone knows, we talked about this a couple of times before, and I'm sure people have received some notice that Hoffman Street west of Water Street's in pretty bad condition. So good news for us is we don't have a lot of utilities that are running from Water Street over towards the river, so it makes them pretty easy candidates as far as getting the work done. So identified the needs. We also talked a little bit about Mary Street. Fleece and Vanderbrink and Public Works, we kind of started working our way from the north side of downtown on some of those side streets and working our way south. So if you remember back, we had done some work on Spear Street and then moved over to Francis Street last year. And then this year we were looking at Mary Street. We decided that the best course of action would be to not lump Mary Street into this project this fall, even though we have some budgeted dollars that would cover the cost of it. But it would be better. There's a catch basin in particular, kind of by the Wickwood Inn on that corner, on the northwest corner of that intersection, that's sunken in pretty bad, as well as some concrete work that needs to be performed. So once you start bringing in excavators, and it's more than just an asphalt company, we thought that a better approach, we would get better pricing if we lump this together in the spring with the Maple Street project, with the contingency that we would expect that portion of the work to be done before Memorial Day. So so it is broken up between some work this fall and in the spring. At least that's our recommendation at least. So DPW if we move forward with the work, and the asphalt gets replaced, DPW will follow back through and repaint the parking spaces and center lines, internally. So, we put it out for bids. Bids were collected until September 30th. We did secure one bid from a familiar face, A1 Asphalt Inc. They did some work for us back in 2023. Did a really good job for us. They also helped us out over on Vine Street, at one point when the entrance, that intersection got torn up by, some construction activities. They did a really good job for us. So, they're pre-qualified by MDOT. And then we had a good working relationship with them in the past. So they put, the price of $57,208.10, together for us to cover, again, Lucy Street, that Hoffman Street end, and then the Wicks Park parking lot. So engineering and public works are comfortable with those figures, with some contingencies and engineering and administrative, dollars set aside. We anticipate the overall project will cost about $67,000. So, if you have any questions, by all means.
Thanks, Scott. Great overview. Any questions for Scott?
Yeah.
Gregory?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just curious, what temporary traffic control, what does that consist of?
So signage, flaggers, mobilizing some equipment, yeah,
Okay.
detour signage, that sort of thing.
That makes
I saw that number too for the temporary traffic control, and that's something that I think maybe John can weigh in on that if he has more insight to it, but that's a number.
Well,
So,
hiring people out there with flags, I can understand that that probably bumped up the number quite a bit to have an actual person up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Russ, you had questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Anderson. Thanks, Scott, for being here. A few questions. So Lucy is set length between Butler and just east of Butler,
Not the whole length, just a small
Right,
section.
right,
Yeah,
right.
about a 30 by 10 section.
right?
Or so.
What's the targeted completion date?
The asphalt plants generally close down mid-November, so this would be completed as long as F&V has certain specs that they require, to actually lay the asphalt down. So as long as they're within spec and can get it done before the asphalt plants close down, that would be our target.
So mid-November.
Yeah.
Would that be the same case with Maine too? The parking lot?
Yep, all. It's actually a pretty quick operation. If you've seen these guys work, they can zip off that top layer of road in a hurry, and sometimes they usually mill it one day and then repave it the next. So it's a pretty seamless operation. You might see about 1.5 inch, elevation difference in the spots where they've milled, but it's fairly gentle. I wouldn't call it gentle, but it's not a huge rough elevation change for traffic.
Okay. And Hoffman Street, I'm so happy about that. I know I've been raising the red flag on that one for a period of time. So I'm very happy to see that done. So that'll be completed by the same time frame as the others.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. That's been something that's been brought up to me by business owners and others. You mentioned Mary Street, and there's a spot at Mary and Butler. Is that what you were alluding to when you said, because we've got a sunken,
Oh, yeah.
the roads?
Yeah, the catch basin, actually all of our storm sewers and catch basins along Butler Street are in pretty rough shape. I think we all know that, which is why it's on the CIP for around 2029. Doesn't mean that we're necessarily doing that, but at least it's due. So if you look down in that catch basin structure, it's just very deteriorated. So what this will end up doing is we can have a company come in, excavate around it, raise it up with some rings, mortar it back up, along with some sidewalk work. There's a tree on the corner by
Right.
Wickwood that the sidewalk actually goes around it.
Mhm.
So we're not meeting that 5-foot minimum width requirement for ADA compliance in that location. So we'll probably end up recommending at least taking that tree out. We'll replant as we normally do, but probably want to take that tree out to get our sidewalk back to a minimum width.
Great, thank you. And then will this impact the city's pacer? Will that require an update to the city's pacer, the pavement, and I
Yeah,
forget the exact acronym?
That's done. Paiser's done what, John? About every 5 years or so? Is that about right?
Yeah, I would say 2 to 5 years. We don't update it every time we do a project, but yeah, it will obviously improve the conditions that are reflected.
Great, thank you, John. Last question is, this is budgeted in our major street fund? Is that where this is gonna come from?
This one would be a combination of major and local streets.
Okay.
So Ironically, Butler Street is a major street, Water Street is not. So Lucy Street also qualifies as a major street as well, if you look at the Act 51 map, so.
Okay.
The Wicks Park parking lot, that would be local street, and Hoffman Street, that would be local as well.
Great. Good work. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else? All right, this will be on the agenda on Monday.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, Scott.
Appreciate it.
John. Okay, that takes us to the Water Distribution Systems Material Inventory on page 25. Ryan, you wanna?
Yeah, I'll kind of kick it off and then we can get into any more technical questions with Mr. Moxie, who's with us today. So as you all likely remember, we were issued a pretty substantial or awarded a pretty substantial grant in 2024. The amount of $221,000 from Eagle to do our final distribution systems and materials inventory, right? This is where we needed to actually check a certain number of water service lines to determine if they are lead or if they are, have galvanized parts that were previously connected to lead, or if they weren't lead at all. And then we had to submit those findings to the state of Michigan. So our contractor got some of the work done last year, and we submitted that report to Eagle timely with a note that we would be kind of updating it with our final numbers once the work was completed. And so that work by Compton Inc. is done. And so just in summary, the report that our engineers at Fleece and Vanderbrink submitted to the state indicated that we have 6 lead service lines. We have 127 lines that were galvanized previously connected to lead. We have 440 that are non-lead, and then we have 391 lines where we don't know the status. And so we did include in your packet a link to kind of view a pretty lengthy spreadsheet that actually has every address and the results and where we're at by property. And one thing I want to note, really up front, and I think, folks hear lead and they hear water and they're thinking like Flint, right? And this is where a lot of these lead and copper rules and things came from, right? We want to, over time, get these lead components and lead lines out of our system so we don't have the risk of something like that occurring. So just because there is a lead service line at a particular property, or if there's a galvanized line that was previously connected to lead, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's lead present in the drinking water, but there is the risk and potential there. And so that's essentially where there's a requirement to replace these lines over time at the city's costs and expense. And then there's also some notification requirements that have kicked in with this work as well. So some of you may have started getting some questions from some of your constituents, and that's exactly why we wanted to have this presentation for you today. Some of you might have gotten a notice as well. So anybody that has an unknown status service line, or any of the lines that were lead or had components that were previously connected to lead, received a notice. It's essentially a template that the state provided to us to kind of let folks know, hey, we either don't know, or there's lead in it, or galvanized portions. There is some risk here. Here's what you can do if you want to take some extra steps to kind of, be preventative, or kind of get ahead of things before there's a particular concern, as we're working through continuing to identify the remaining lines, and also kind of develop a plan and implement a plan to actually get these lines replaced as required. So those notices, it was actually quite the project for our clerk, deputy clerk, Michelle over at DPW. Grayson actually helped stuff some envelopes as well. I mean, this took multiple hours over several days to get these notices prepared and sent out. And then this is actually going to be an annual requirement to continue to send them out until somebody's line is no longer a lead service line or unknown. So we're going to continue to do that. In the meantime, I've asked Public Works and our engineers to kind of take the next step and kind of come up with that more formal plan of how are we going to go about replacing, the necessary lines over the next several years. We're going to replace some as part of the Maple Street project next year, so that's going to be a chunk of them, and kind of work to make progress towards that. And I think, we're working towards Elizabeth Street and water main work, and probably some along there the following year. But we need a more comprehensive plan from here now that we kind of have a better idea of where we're at. We kind of have two conflicting, I think, dates right now with the date that we have to have these done by. We have the state's rule is by 2040, and then late last year, the federal government came out with a rule or guidance that we needed to have it done within 10 years from October of 2024. Although, that certainly could be subject to change. There's been a change in administration, and I hear there's some litigation on that in the courts as well. But nonetheless, needs to be done. We're already collecting kind of a water capital charge on bills for, water main replacements, lead service line replacements. We know it's not going to be all, collect all the dollars that we need, but there's more work that we need to do on the funding front. But wanted to at least get this in front of you with where we're at and the findings of the reports and see if there's any questions that you might have for engineering or me.
Questions? Russ?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Anderson. So 2040 is still the date that we're going by in terms of completion, unless something changes in between now and then. That's essentially what we're going with.
Well, I mean, John, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we got to really kind of look at aiming for that 10-year mark that the federal government has established.
So 2035, excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's January 1 of 2035 maybe. But yeah, as far as we're handling it internally, the dust hasn't settled on it yet, but we're kind of using that 2034 because the federal requirements are going to supersede what the state was doing.
Thank you, John.
Michigan was kind of a leader on this issue. State of Michigan set the first deadline, and then the feds kind of came in over top of that.
Thank you, John. And looking at the numbers, so we have a total number of lines of 964. Does that represent the full inventory of lines that are in scope and then it breaks it down from there? But is that 964, is there any more that could be added at some point? Or does that
We
represent
do
our-
on occasion find some lines that aren't in that inventory. Customers that have multiple lines, but that is based on Cal Lake's billing. So that represents what Cal Lake knows about. The system is old enough that there are weird things. We find them every day. So this spreadsheet will continue to be refined as we learn more and as we cross them off the list, things like that.
Okay, thank you, John. Then of those, 6 lead service lines have been confirmed, and we have 391 that are not known. So it's quite a big bogey there in terms of what we still have to identify. So we don't know what that number is going to be from the 391, right? We have no way to even estimate what that number is going to be until we
Yeah,
start.
the good news is the grant from Eagle, the TMF grant, cut that number of unknowns in half. It was closer to 800
Right.
before we started. So that was really the purpose of the grant. But we still have, about 400 unknowns out there. So this asphalt project that we're doing this fall is probably going to be the last one that doesn't come with some kind of an investigation, a deeper investigation about service lines underneath. We've kind of chipped away at all the ones that we feel pretty confident we don't have any water service issues underneath them.
So we've come a long way in terms of identifying what our scope is going to be. Thank you, John, and thank you, Ryan, and everybody else that's been involved with this. How confident do we feel that we're going to be able to meet the target, whether it's 2035 or 2040? Are we feeling pretty good about making this?
Yeah, we're going to knock a big chunk, as Ryan mentioned, with Maple Street. We did, I think, at least 1 or 2 of those were the confirmed lead, and some more unknowns and suspecteds are going to come off the list with Maple Street. And then there's really 2 approaches. We can either do a system-wide project to get rid of the rest of the unknowns and go out and replace all the ones we need to, or we can kind of just target a certain number every year. There's different ways to skin the cat there. But it's going to be a multi-million-dollar, undertaking between now and, whatever that date is. For now, I would use 2034 just to be safe.
Thank you, John. And again, reading through the information, it said, one point that I picked up is said the city will be, this is my understanding, the city will be financially responsible for lead pipe replacement unless the resident asks to have the line replaced sooner, and then it's just a 50-50 split. Is that right?
Yeah, that's how we've been handling those. I mean, some folks, I think everybody would like to have their lines done sooner rather than later. Obviously, for us, we need to develop a more formal plan, and obviously, we're going to get economies of scale with doing a larger project. But there have been occasions where there's either been an issue with a line that needs to be, upsized, or there was a break or an issue, or if folks just simply have wanted to get that line replaced, and we've kind of been splitting that cost 50-50 with folks. Assuming council's fine with that, I think, we probably continue to take that approach. If folks are looking to do something sooner. John, do you have anything to add?
No, yeah, that's been our kind of unofficial policy, and it's kind of been a win-win as people do projects and things like that. It's just an easy way to cross those off the list.
Thank you. And last comment is on the letters. Thank you for calling that out, Ryan. I did get a couple of questions, and one of them was, so the city manager, because the letter was coming from the city, is saying it's okay to drink contaminated water. So my answer was, no, that's not what's said in the letter. So I think we need to be just a little aware of that, maybe how some people interpret. Of course, you can't control the message once it's out there, but that was a word that was contaminated. And I said, no, that's not what's being said. So was the language in the letter, did that come from, was that a boilerplate from Fleece, or was that from Eagle, or one we authored ourselves?
Yeah, it's predominantly boilerplate from Eagle.
Okay.
And there's some modification obviously to put our more personal information into it, but yeah, I mean, 99% of it is really
Okay.
template from Eagle. And I agree, the language isn't, maybe the best, and it's a little scary. I mean, and it is, we want people to know that there is a risk, but I certainly don't want folks to come away with, oh my gosh, there's all this lead and they're letting us drink lead and they've been letting us do that for years, because that's not the case. That's not, I think even Cal Lake is doing testing on those that are known lead, and we're not exceeding any, minimum, requirements for lead in the water and that sort of thing. There's a lot of, and John maybe could touch on what goes into making sure that lead isn't leaching into a particular, into the water. But we're working on some, I talked with Joe about this today, because I know Cal Lake's getting questions as well. And, there's a water quality report that folks can refer to as far as our overall water system. But we're going to work on some kind of FAQs in response to some of the questions that we are getting from folks. Because some folks are like, well, if I have an unknown, how do I find out sooner if I'm interested in knowing what I have? Well, we're telling folks where it's coming into your home, take that picture. Send it to us. We'll take a look. That's going to be at least some clue as whether it is or it isn't. If folks want to hire a private plumber and expose the line and check different points, there's permits that are needed for the right of way and that sort of thing. I mean, they're welcome to do that too if they want to get to it sooner rather than later. There's also been some questions about, the letter basically says, like, look, you could choose to personally kind of do your own kind of lead testing at home as well. There's a few different kinds of tests, and as my understanding and talking with Eagle, and so I've been in conversation with Eagle and the health department on kind of what's the best recommended test for folks to go with. I'm trying to nail them down on that. So once we have that, we'll get out some updated information as well to help all some of the additional questions that are coming up.
Thank you. And I thought, as we're talking about this, we have a lot of seasonal homes here, which are, as a matter of fact, I got one across the street that they close it down. They literally shut the water off and the home sits quiet the entire winter. And I don't know whether they're on the list of lead pipe or not. I really don't know. But maybe we think about sometime in late winter, maybe we think about identifying those homes that we don't know or we have confirmed and say, hey, if you're a seasonal home, because there's suggestions in there on what to do to mitigate your risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a reminder to them at some point would be helpful, just to, because some people over the winter, they just may totally forget about this.
Sure.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
It's not a large number of properties, but might be thoughtful.
Yeah, we can evaluate whether to
Yeah.
maybe put something out in the spring again, just like generally.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, this notice does have to go out every year. So you're going to see this notice next summer, early fall again to folks.
Thank you.
Notice, can you remind me, when was that mailed out?
It was Friday.
Friday.
Oh, just this week.
The end of last week.
Okay.
So Thursday and Friday, because there were multiple batches going out as we.
Okay. I was just curious about feedback, but that's too early for that right now. I remember at one point you were asking folks to take pictures, right? And
Yep.
send pictures in.
Yep,
Have
please
you
do.
gotten anything back from those or?
Yeah, I don't know if John, if you have off the top of your head how many we got back. It was quite a few.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we got a pretty good response from that. And the folks that are calling in, that's kind of our first question is whether they sent their picture, because that, like Ryan said, that helps, if you've got something coming into the house, that gives us a pretty good idea of what is at least immediately outside the house.
All right, other questions, Joe?
Well, first of all, thank you, Ryan and John, and thank the staff for all the work. It's obviously very important to get done right. And I appreciate that you guys are now kind of going into the planning phase, and you're going to be looking for the best ways to do this from an economy scale perspective. One thought though that came into mind is with the letters going out and more letters potentially following. You know, and people starting to, you know, take matters in their own hands in terms of getting tests done, which is a great thing.
Yep.
Smart, right? But I think that, as you're kind of laying out your plan, you may want to consider what happens if somebody does have a concerning test that comes back and making sure there's a way that they can be bumped up on the priority list, whether that is part of the cost share arrangement or not. I think that's something we should be talking about as a council, but, you know, obviously we don't want anybody with contaminated water out there, so that would be my only comment.
Sure.
Appreciate all of it.
Great. If there are no other questions, we'll move on. This will be on our meeting on Monday. Okay, that takes us to selection. Oh, wait, no, takes us to C, which is proposed cost sharing agreement for 720 North Maple Water Service Line, which is page 43.
Yes, just one moment here. See, is Mr. Rodriguez here this evening? Okay, all right, good. You don't have to come up yet or anything. I just wanted to make sure that, so. So speaking of the Maple Street project, a few years ago, the owners of 720 North Maple, I think, found themselves without water one day, and come to find out Jamie can zoom in at all. Come to find out their water service line is actually kind of tied into a main there at the Old Mill Apartments, whereas it should be connected out at the main along Maple Street. And so there was some discussion back then about the need to correct that issue and what, you know, cost sharing, you know, if any, might look like. And our engineers worked to get some quotes and costs. And at the time, the cost was, you know, about $18,000 to $22,000 to make that correction and address that particular issue. You know, issue kind of, you know, fell off, didn't go anywhere. And then now we're at the point where, well, we're going to be in the area and doing work. Is there an opportunity maybe to make this correction? And then there's also a number of kind of vacant parcels back in this particular area that are owned by Mr. Rodriguez, who also owns 720 North Maple. And he's wondering if the city would be interested or willing to install an 8-inch stub as part of our project for future development to connect to. So obviously by doing, you know, this work as part of our overall project area, that's going to save some costs on this. So we've kind of brought back up this idea of maybe a 50-50 cost share to address the water line service issue being improperly connected. I think from his perspective, it's like, well, the city knew or should have known about it and allowed it to be connected to that area improperly, and that's why he's kind of making an ask to the city to participate in that cost. And then on the 8-inch stub for future development, I mean, that's something that really would be his responsibility for, you know, his future development. So we've developed a kind of a draft agreement for council to consider if you're willing to split that water service line issue 50-50. F&B's estimate on that would be between $7,000 and $11,000. So, you know, quite a bit lower than to do it as a standalone project. And then we'd split that cost 50-50. And then the 8-inch line again would be kind of 100% Mr. Rodriguez's costs. So I don't know if you'd like to hear from Mr. Rodriguez at all. He's here, and I think happy to answer any questions if you have any as well.
Was just curious, was at the time, and I wasn't here before Old Mill Heights, was that a road leading into your property before? I'm just trying to figure out why the line was.
So the Old Mill Heights came in first, but I think real soon afterwards, 720 was developed. And that's when they tied in and it was the same plumber. So he said, I can do this. I think that's what happened.
Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah, we actually found out when we were trying to replace the main to our house, we couldn't find a shut off at the street, and the water company came out, spent 2 days out there looking and couldn't find it. And so when we finally found that there was one at the apartments, but it was paved over when they rehabbed the apartments about 7 or 8 years ago. So there's no longer shut off.
Oh,
That explains a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
I had a question from a resident who thought that somehow Cal Lake should pays for stuff like this. Is that? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the water main along Maples, is owned by the city. I mean, Cal Lake handles repairs, maintenance, and that sort of thing. But, the water main infrastructure is ours, and then obviously the water service line, for the most part, is the property owners. So
Okay.
it's kind of the nature of us owning a distribution system historically.
Great.
Yep.
Other questions? Russ?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for being here today. So, yeah, I do remember this coming up previously, and having some discussions, and then it just, as you mentioned, it just kind of fell to the side. So, so as I'm reading this, the city originally approved that connection that was on this, that was on the schematic that we were just looking at. Do you remember, just for ease of, because you said the plumber was there and that the plumber just said this would be easier just connecting it versus running a line out to make.
I'm knowing the plumber, and I forget his name. He was really well known in the area and cutting corners back in the 80s. So that's how things were handled back then. And the person who built the house worked at the city of Saugatuck at the time. So I'm not sure what happened exactly. Yeah.
Do we have any situations we've run into like this before? This is a new one for me, but there may have been times it's happened I wasn't here. Do we know? And sorry, Mr. Rodriguez, I'm just trying to get a sense of.
Yeah, John, I don't know if you can remember over any specific like this over the years. Obviously, there's been a lot of weird connection to others issues well, downtown's a perfect example, frankly, but.
Yeah, we do have, excuse me, we do have a lot of instances of people's water services crossing other properties without an easement, but this is kind of a one of one.
You mentioned that you have more than just the lot that the house is on, but I know I've been to concerts speaking. But you mentioned there's other lots there.
Yeah, adjacent to our home, there, we own actually 5 other lots.
That are building.
Yeah, they are buildable. We don't plan on doing anything right now, but when I found out they're redoing the street and water lines, it just made sense to put a stub in for the future,
Right.
whenever that is. We don't
Right.
have plans right now.
Oh, yeah, I'm
No.
not asking you.
Yeah, yeah, we don't have
Wondering,
plans.
Like you said, for the future. So
Right.
there-
We were
there's
surprised by,
no future
yeah.
development.
Right, we were surprised by the 8-inch. That was a fire department request for a fire hydrant, I guess.
Right.
So that's really large. Yeah.
So looking at, Jamie, could you pull up 50, page 50, please? So the 16-inch ductile iron line, that water line that's already going back to 700, that's in place? I'm
That's
looking at-
actually a sanitary sewer force main.
Excuse me, sanitary sewer. So the only, so the line that's in question, the field located and abandoned existing 2-inch service, the one that's connected into Old Mill, that's the one that's going to be essentially disconnected and replaced. Right? Am I
Yeah,
reading this correctly?
disconnected from Old Mill and replaced and tied into Maple
Yes.
Street, wherever we find it. Yep.
Right, right. So that new line essentially is the red line that's got the
Correct.
arrow
Correct,
down to
yep.
it. So the stub that you've asked for would be stub coming in from Maple Street, and then it just would be stubbed off until potential future connections.
Correct, yeah, just pretty south of the one for 720. Yes.
Is this house over here at 700, is that a well unit or is that a?
Yeah, that just got rebuilt. It was torn down and rebuilt recently.
Okay,
Yeah, just, last year.
that's a rental, right?
It's yes, it's a
Long term.
long-term rental, yeah.
Yeah, I think I,
Yeah, it's a Dave Anderson's family, if you know them.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Okay, anything else? Great, thank you for joining us.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Be on Monday's agenda. Okay, it takes us to D, the selection of a parking consultant for support of the Advisory Parking Improvements Task Force. So Ryan and Sir Gregory will chime in on this. And we also have a representative from Walker.
That is true, yes. So back in July, as part of your work to approve the creation of an advisory parking improvements task force, you also reviewed and approved issuing a request for proposals for consulting services for a parking study and solutions and they really kind of support the work of the task force. So we received three excellent proposals in response to our RFP, which was great to see. All of those are in your packets today for your review. Mayor Anderson, Councilmember Muncy, and I reviewed the proposals and actually conducted interviews of each firm that submitted a proposal. And based on the findings during those interviews and reading through the proposals and hearing from the teams, we're recommending that City Council approve the proposal from Walker Consultants. Walker is really recognized as an industry leader in parking studies. In fact, you might have saw in their proposal that I think they've done 185 parking studies just in Michigan alone, and they're since their firm was established. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that number, but there's really kind of a unique circumstance here in that Walker also partnered with Fleece and Vanderbrink to submit a proposal, and so that's kind of gives us a unique opportunity to have a fresh set of eyes from the Walker team who specializes in parking related concerns and issues, with Fleece, who's been our longtime engineers who really know every nook and cranny and where things are at, and so they've teamed up on this particular proposal. I think there's a lot of benefit in having their consulting services with a project like this. Like parking concerns have really persisted for decades, and we haven't had like a deep dive consultant analysis, to my knowledge at least, on these particular issues. And I think Walker's going to bring their national best practices, and Fleece is going to bring their on-the-ground experience. And some of the solutions that are being thrown around out there are really capital intensive, big investments that the city would be making. And so to have, slow down, do a deep dive into each one of those particular options and looking at it, whether they're even right for us, would be really, I think, wise for us to do before we, make a decision on something that may not necessarily be the best for the city. And so perhaps, Mayor, if I could, I maybe can turn it over to Eric from Walker, just to kind of maybe tell you a little bit about his firm, and then perhaps maybe allow Councilmember Muncy to share his perspective and then answer any questions.
Thank you for joining us. Nice to see
Absolutely,
you
thank you for
again.
having me. So I'm Eric Haggett from Walker Consultants. I'm a director of planning based in our Chicago office, but I've worked not in all 50 states, but almost. Colleagues of mine have worked in all 50 states. Our company was actually founded in Kalamazoo in 1960, and now we have Kalamazoo, Ann Arbor, Traverse City, and I think that's all the Michigan offices, but then we have 27 or so other offices throughout the country. And so primarily what our company does is downtown, university, hospital campus, parking and transportation planning, and then some other associated services. And so all that I focus on are downtown, such as yourselves, policy, rules and regulations, enforcement, and those types of practices. And then others at my firm do things like design and functional layouts. And we do a lot in the curb management space, if you've heard of that, pairing deliveries with parking and how to best use the curb, most effectively, especially in places with limited real estate. Because as Mr. Cummings said, a lot of the infrastructure associated with parking is very, very expensive. A new parking lot is one thing if you have the land, but a parking structure is another thing. Even signage and wayfinding and those sorts of things are very, very pricey. So the approach that we laid out is really knowing that you haven't had a plan like this put together in a while, and that currently there's not much in the way of active parking management. We know there's some time limits out there. We know there's some ADA spaces, some public, some private parking. We know a few private entities are charging. Is really to look at it from the ground up, assuming that you're just starting with a clean slate, because you kind of are. So we would come in addition to physically inventorying all of the parking in the city, with the help of Fleece and Vandenbrink, document utilization, both in a season like you have now, but then also in the busy season when we know things really get tight. Then engage the community, engage the business owners, engage the task force to really get a local perspective. Because as much as I personally visit Southwest Michigan and have been to Saugatuck, I don't see what you all see living here, what other people see living here. So we take all that, put it together and develop really sort of a menu of options for here's what we think you should do first, second, third, fourth, and it kind of builds upon itself. We almost never, I don't know if I've personally ever in a downtown said parking garage is your solution. It's usually improve your or adjust your time limits or relay out your spaces here or change your hours of operation. All those things sort of build up to then see what the impacts are before you jump to some really capital intensive solution. So that's in very broad brushstrokes sort of what we've proposed here, but happy to answer any specific questions about the proposal, timing, process, any of that.
Gregory, anything you want to add before we open up for questions?
Sure. I want to thank you and the other two folks that, of course, they're probably not listening, but everyone that came up to bring these proposals to us. What stood out to me with Walker was your recommendations, and then myself looking at to see personally what you've done in Ann Arbor, and I also visited Saginaw as well. And talked to some folks that you worked with in those communities as well and said good things about you. I appreciate the process of it too with Ryan and Holly, because they pretty much let me ask those questions. And I appreciate letting me ask some of the questions about other projects that you worked on, like St. Joe, which we've read about, and you answered that satisfactory to me. And so I really appreciate that. I also want to thank Ryan because, cost was a concern to me. And we went back with you with this proposal and thought to see where we could cut some costs. And we were able to shave about 22 grand off your original offer. And I appreciate you doing that with us.
Absolutely.
I know we have the budget for consulting, and it might look like a big price tag, but it's a big project, and it's a project that our town has been talking about for decades. I'm looking forward to working with the public and getting all the information before we find out really what we want to do, because I hear lots of solutions already. However, we don't even know how many parking places we have. We don't even know we can guess. I mean, I live downtown and I see a lot, but I still don't know the behavior of parking here in the summertime. So I'm hoping that the rest of council, even though I know that there's a thing about expense, but I think it's warranted in this case. So I hope that the rest of council agrees.
Just going to add one more thing before we do questions. So one of their colleagues, John Dorset, he walked, I think, every street, certainly this side, well, because it was only for this side of the river, literally walked every street the day
tends to do
before. And which is great. I mean, it was heartening to see sort of that level of commitment, and because you really, those of us who've walked the streets, that's how you really get to know the city and what the issues are. So.
And also, yeah, I appreciate that as well. And I also appreciate having Fleece and Vanderbrink on your team. We have a great relationship with them. They have a lot of knowledge about our streets already. So I think that's also a plus.
And the fact that they maintain the GIS is a huge help and will only aid in the deliverables.
Great, so questions? Comments? Joe?
Yeah, thank you for showing.
Absolutely.
Together, and thank you for the summit. Where I come from a consulting background, and I've kind of read through the approach you try to tackle it. It's spot on. There's a lot of common sense in there. And I believe that bringing in experts as a consultants to help in something like this is going to open up, things we never thought of, and it's going to help us think through the problem. So I'm really supportive of it. I know it's going to cost us, but how many previous councils have kind of gone through this problem without nowhere, right? So I think it's as challenging it'll be for some people spending money. I think it's smart on We all execute as well. I did walk through the deliverables again, kind of following methodology. It all makes sense. The only concern I really have in the whole proposal. Is on page 106, the ownership of documents, which basically states that Walker routine ownership of all reports, drawings, plans, specifications, blah, blah, blah. Those are work products that we're paying for, so I'm kind of curious, with the exception of the final report and GIS files. You know, I'm kind of curious why you're carving that out as ultimately your intellectual property versus our work product.
That I actually don't know. That is our standard contract language. I could certainly ask about that. Yeah. I mean, I know there's some, you know, secret to the sauce kind of stuff that it usually applies more to like design work and things like that. Anything financial related, financial models and that sort of thing, we typically retain, but I don't know. I'm not sure if any of the other materials would really be things that we could not pass to the city. Obviously, like you said, you're paying for the work and we'll most likely post the results publicly. So yeah, certainly willing to.
File definition of inventory, you know, what's out
Yeah.
there, needs analysis. I don't know how much that's gonna end up in the final report, which is technically ours, but.
Well, so yeah, all of those things. Yeah, at least those items that you named are all the task deliverables or different phase deliverables. Those 100% would be yours. Survey results, you know, online survey results, stakeholder engagement summaries, all of that sort of thing. It's really, if there's any kind of financial modeling, any kind of previous versions of things like parking lot layouts and stuff like that, I think that's more what's being referred to there.
It specifically calls out pretty much everything but the final report. It even says that. If we separate reviews and like that. Any work done today is yours, not ours, so.
Well, maybe we can enumerate that a little better to say task deliverables and final report. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise. It's. I don't think that. So.
Other questions? Russ?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Anderson. Thank you, Eric, for being here. You said you're from the Chicago office?
I am.
I hope you don't use the Chicago parking solution as a template for this.
I don't. I'm from small town outside Cleveland. I spent most of my time there. And like I said, I've worked in more small and medium sized cities than large cities for sure.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for I lived in Chicago for 18 years and you probably know the story. It's a real mess. They essentially gave away quite a bit of money. Anyway, so leads into my question is great references. Is there a comp within your other work that you've done here in the state of Michigan? I know it's mentioned St. Joseph and Saginaw and other towns, which are good cities, but Saugatuck's a bit unique because of its size, geographic location, and just the intensity of use. I'd really love to see if you could point us maybe to a specific work project that you've done or maybe a partner has done that would be comparable to maybe what we might see here.
I'm not sure about in Michigan. I know.
Have to be in Michigan. It could be. just
Yeah,
a
I
different
know
type.
nationwide, places like Carmel, California and places like that. We've done a lot of work, you know, geographically constrained, super active, not a lot of ins and outs to the city. I could come up with others. I can follow up with that for sure. But whenever we approach a project, we don't come at it from this city is just like that city. I mean, you mentioned St. Joe, but their layout, their proximity to Lake Michigan versus yours, the physical constraints, the, you know, city-owned land there versus here, the mix of businesses, all of those things are completely different. Same with any other city, you know, I would compare you to. So that's why we start it from a process of just learning as much as possible from you all. Because we can bring best practices from wherever, but that doesn't mean it'll apply here. And similarly with, you know, recommendation development, we're not going to come with the Chicago solution or any other solution that says put in a 10-story parking garage, you know, around the corner. That wouldn't make any sense. So we start off with learning from you, developing recommendations that are appropriately scaled, fit the character, and then even vet those further with you all to make sure that they really do fit. But I can come up with some other
That-
more comparable cities for sure.
I'm very confident in the deliverables of this project. I just would like to see an example of just, and not to say that's a comparable to the sense that ours is going to look exactly the same to your point. So I'd appreciate that. Also too, is that the city has done some studies in the past. So I want to make sure that we're clear that the city has not just ignored this problem.
Mm.
I grew up in this town, and parking has been a constant topic of conversation ever since I have a memory of this, and this goes back to the sixties. So we've always had this, and it's a good problem because it means that we're a popular town. It's kind of gone up and down over the years. But I just want to be clear that the city has taken steps to try to address this issue. We have had timed parking. You see some of the remnants of the signs, the 3-hour parking is one of the remnants of past attempts. The management of it proved to be a bit of a difficult challenge for the city. There were some other different things that have been done over the years. So I just want to make sure that, we're clear that it's not like we haven't done anything.
Sure.
Other past councils have done work. As a matter of fact, I think there's one study that I think one of our citizens gave to the mayor. So there's certainly documents there that can be shared with you to just kind of inform you in terms of what we've done. But I just want to be clear that, we have done work on this. It's not as though we haven't.
Yeah,
So-
we would request
Yeah,
all of
perfect.
that, absolutely.
And to address that, Russ, so it was Sandra Randolph, and it was a folder about
Oh, Sandra,
thick,
okay.
with multiple studies dating back to the 90s.
I have that on my desk.
Yeah, Gregory's got it,
Excellent.
and
Yeah.
the staff scanned it all in, so all of that information's available to.
Excellent. And as I read through your documentation, when I first read it, I was like, this is a company that started by building parking structures, and I was concerned that that was going to be the predisposed solution. But as I read further into it, it became very clear that there's a much more holistic approach to this in consideration of the local needs and so forth. And I've heard a lot of comments, and again, I don't want to get too far ahead of this, but there's a lot of comments about parking structures and paid parking, and there's a lot of comments about, it's more a lack of knowledge about what that might potentially mean for the community.
Mm.
But even a parking structure is about $19,000 a space, so you
You're
do the
about,
math.
you're
and
about
it's
double that now,
50.
actually.
Double that? Okay, so do the math. It's,
Yeah.
talk about intensive capital investment.
Mhm.
But then I got to task one in your report, project coordination and problem identification. And that really helped me appreciate where your firm is going to come from. Because I've said this to Councilmember Muncy, and I've said it to other folks, the real key here, in my opinion, is to identify what the problem is first.
Mhm.
Because I've asked several people when they say, oh, we have a parking problem. I said, well, tell me what the problem is. And 9 times out of 10, what it comes down to is they can't pull up in front of the drugstore and go and get their scripts.
Right.
Right, that's
Right?
something we
Right?
talked about, Russ, in
Yep.
the discussion is, looking at perhaps, and that could be, I'm just putting it out there, like I said, I hate to have any solution before we
Right,
have the
yeah,
data,
yeah.
but having maybe we need more, 15-minute spots, maybe a few more around town, that could come out. And perhaps more handicap, parking places as well, though I've heard probably twice as many.
Yeah, right. We've probably all heard
That
that.
you have almost every day. I get either somebody in town, an email or a message. And I keep reminding folks, if anybody's listening, for all those ideas, if you happen to see me at Phil's or at the Sandbar having a cocktail and you want to talk about it, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I'm willing to talk about it. But I implore you to put it down in an email and wait until we get to those meetings where we have the whole committee together and we can look at all those things. Because chances are, I'm gonna forget those things that you bring up when we get to that point, so.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. I don't want to get too far ahead of
Oh,
this
yeah.
because we haven't identified the problem. But the other problem, when I've asked someone and I finally got him to answer it, he said, well, it's because I can't pull up in front of the sandbar when I would get a beer. And I said, well, he's an older person. And I said, well, why don't you park in a handicap spot and walk? He said, because I don't want to do that. So that's a matter of personal choice.
Yep.
So I think these are the kinds of things that will be teased out of the conversation. So if we ask people to really, so the problem identification, in my opinion, is the key.
Well, yeah, and it's, the problems are gonna be different for different groups of people.
Sure.
Employees versus seasonal residents versus visitors versus short-term rentals versus full-time residents. Oftentimes, the sort of common phrase is walking problem versus parking problem, or a finding a space problem versus a parking problem. So that is exactly what that task is focused on. However, what I think I led with in the interview and often lead with is, we're not gonna make everybody else happy, or everybody happy. There's not enough physical space on most streets, especially in a vibrant city, for every car to fit, for everybody to be able to pull right in front of their desired destination. It's just not possible. Even a parking lot or garage across the street from a destination, some people think that is too far. That's not the most desirable spot to a lot of people because of safety concerns or, mobility issues. So we're going to come in with the best solutions for the community as a whole, trying to address as many of these issues as possible. However, not everybody's going to be satisfied. We're not going to solve all the quote unquote parking problems that you have. It's just not feasible.
I think we already know that from other studies that we've done here before.
That's right.
Jamie, could you go to page 91, please? And this proposed area, a couple questions. One is it does not include or doesn't extend to this area over by the Peterson Preserve. So that would be at the very top of this diagram. It stops at basically Holland and Lucy. And there's actually public parking designated back in that area on Simonson Drive. So that should, in my opinion, should definitely be included in this occupancy count.
Yeah, we can extend that back. The goal of this was to sort of limit some of the purely residential streets with no parking, sort of on the outskirts of town. But if we missed a designated public parking area, then certainly we
that's-
can include that for sure.
That's definitely an area there, and as well as up Mason and more Mason than Allegan, but there's people that park up on Mason, so, and that wasn't, it stops at, can't read that street.
Mason and Elizabeth.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, there's people actually park east of
Right.
Elizabeth, so in my opinion, those should be extended and included in the boundaries.
Yeah, and the inventory, we could certainly do that. The inventory was intended to cover the entire city. It was really the occupancy counts because we had proposed doing, at least every 2 hours from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., a few different days of the year. The goal is to really understand the most intense areas of use. Obviously, some people might park further out, but it's kind of a trade-off. Do we need to get as much data about those areas, or is sort of a spot check during the busiest time in downtown good enough, that sort of thing? But we can certainly play with that boundary for sure.
Okay.
Good
Let-
point about the reserve. I remember, Councilmember Scott Dean once mentioning that might make a good spot for extra city
Yeah.
parking. So
Yep.
good point there.
Thank you. Last question is based on the Gantt chart that was in the proposal. We're looking at a delivery in 2026 of the final report.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
And that's a function of wanting to get that busy season
Yeah.
occupancy and turnover count. With a less seasonal downtown, I'd say we could probably shorten that timeline, but there's right now and anytime between now and next summer doesn't really compare to the summertime, as we know. So that's really going to be key. But we tried to structure the work so that we wouldn't be sitting idle, so that we'd be performing tasks, so that once we get those final occupancy counts, we can really refine our recommendations and then deliver something pretty soon thereafter.
Good. Well, that'll give Councilmember Muncy and the rest of the task force a lot of time to hear comments from the public. So, because there's so many great ideas that people have brought to me, and I've actually shared them with Councilmember Muncy of, hey, I hadn't thought about that approach, because it's more of in my opinion, it's more of a management issue for us as opposed to an occupant or capacity. I think we've got enough space that we don't manage what we have very well. We've got areas we can improve on. So, but anyway, there's a lot of great ideas in this community of people just have come from other communities and said, hey, this is how we did it. And so we'll have plenty of time to get those ideas on the table.
I'm very happy with the group that we have that we've selected, and also adding an extra resident as well. I think that's helpful as well. So I think I've got a pretty strong team together, but in including that team, I will be reaching out to every single one of you as well, probably with questions along the way as well. So it's going to take all of us to do this together.
Absolutely.
We also have separate set aside for additional stakeholders, in addition to the task force, in addition to public, in addition to the online survey. And we also know that the city's master plan is currently happening as well, which is part of that. There'll be other engagement, and I'm sure parking will come up in those conversations. So we'll be sure to coordinate with that firm too.
And I know we'll also be sure to engage our business owners, not just the residents. Of course, residents are our taxpayers and they've got a lot to say, but our business owners have a lot to say as well. So we'll be reaching
Absolutely.
out to not just our residents and taxpayers, but our business owners as well.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you for being here. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Great. Well, we'll talk about this or vote on this
Thank you.
on Monday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. That takes us to the artsy bike rack, page 157. Lisa,
I'll,
Lisa.
Lisa Mize, present all the fun here, you know? Yes.
Hello, thank you
Hi.
for having me. Just to give you a reminder, where the funds came from, the Michigan Association of CVBs, post-COVID gave grants out to all the Michigan state CVBs, and we were awarded 134,000. Some of that, as you know, went to the Wi-Fi for Oval Beach. Some of it went to Fenville Splash Pad. The artsy bike racks and bike racks that you and Douglas also have are coming from that fund, as well as some other items. You may remember that I started working with Vince Heiser, the industrial arts teacher up at the high school last spring. Unfortunately, I was a little late to the game before school was released and didn't have students anymore. Anyway, Vince got back with me. The new class came up with lots of designs that I went and reviewed with Vince and narrowed it down to this one. I wanted to make it really easy for you, actually. There were other designs, but the criteria that we gave the kids was, all we said was artsy bike racks. That's it. And so we got everything in return. I really like the palette option because of the palette sign and the historical value of that and how we are the art coast of Michigan, and it just ties it all in. So that's why I chose to present this one to council. I think it's fun. I think it talks about the art coast. It's on brand. I hope that, and this student, her name I believe is Tessa Knapp, did a great job, but I'm sure if council requires something more detailed, I can ask for that as well. And then also just to remind you that when we identified different places with Scott and Ryan and I walked around town a year ago, I don't remember, looking at identifying spots for these bike racks. The artsy bike rack, I believe, was going to be at Village Square Park, kind of across the street from the playground, where the Christian Science Monitor Church thing. So that's the location. I just wanted you to see this and get any feedback and let you know what we're working on.
Thanks, Lisa. Lauren? you have
I think
any-
it's fantastic. That's all. It looks great and I can't wait to see if this goes through on Monday, it in all of its beautiful, colorful glory when
Yes.
it's all done.
Yes, I failed to mention, it'll be powder coated.
Yeah.
So all the colors of the palette will be on there. Be beautiful.
That's great.
That was my question as well. I was wondering, oh, yes, it's gonna be colorful.
Yes.
This is made out of metal, correct?
Correct.
And it'll be constructed at the high school,
Correct.
so much like they did the Star,
Exactly.
which was really cool.
Yeah.
Brad helped with that, and that endeavor with the high school kids to remember that wooden star that used to be up there and made it aluminum now. And so I think this is really neat. Lisa, and I have to give you props. You've done some wonderful projects this year.
Thank
And,
you.
You will be missed. I know you're retiring at the end of the year. I know Ashley's gonna do a great job.
will.
I wanna thank you for all the wonderful projects that you brought to our town within
Thanks,
the last
Gregory.
2 years. They've really shown, and they've really made our community a better place.
Thank you.
Questions?
I would just say, thanks, Lisa.
Mhm.
Yeah.
As a cyclist, be curious to see how this is going to work. Isn't there a pad already there, or do we have to pour a new pad for this? If it's going to be at the Village Square?
In the Bert Tillstrom, like the southwest quadrant, the only spot, the existing concrete where I would think it would go would be on the sidewalk approach.
Yeah, it's the corner where the Water Street businesses have their sign up, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, something would have to be poured.
Well, Mr. Heiser and his group, they've done fantastic work, as Gregory mentioned, on the Star and other work. So it's a great project. Thank you.
Great.
Do we know what colors these colors are going to be?
The colors of a palette, red, blue, yellow, green. Yes.
Great.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate you coming. Okay, takes us to 6F Oval Beach Season Recap, page 159.
Mayor, I'm gonna, yeah, kind of tee up Scott and Nikki on this. I know Nikki's has the financials, the numbers that kind of tell you where we stand for the 2025 kind of season calendar year. And then I think Scott's prepared to kind of give you a recap of how things went out through the summer from a staff operational perspective and go from there.
Great. Thanks, Nikki.
All right, so you can go ahead to the next. Check it out, guys.
Yeah, it's a great chart.
Well, not only that, but the numbers.
Well, that's, the chart reflecting the numbers.
Yeah. Absolutely. So as you can see, well, first of all, I've got four seasons up. It used to be 3, and I thought I'd give you a little bit more to look at, although it's 5 in the graph. So again, more information is always better, right? And the season reflects Memorial Day through Labor Day. So that's what we're looking at. Although if I had some pre-sales, they're included in there, obviously. And daily passes, huge increase. Same with the season passes, maybe not what you would call huge, but still more than you're seeing in any of the other years. Our non-residents went down, and I'm thinking that they must have just moved to doing daily passes instead, just showing up when they wanted to. But as you can see, our revenue is also as high as we've seen it, at least in the last 5 years, probably ever. So the one piece that I would like you to note is that in the expenses, the estimated bathroom cost has been put in because it was way off without that. So that's what we're looking at there. I'm thinking success is hugely due to just a wonderful summer, beautiful summer. We did, if you go to the next one, we did lean down our staff a little bit. And we also, further down is the concessions. I'm also going to say that they lean down the food offerings. So that's going to reflect in a variety of areas, the wages, the supplies, things like that. There was something else. We'll get to it. But and here, can I point? Here is the estimated number right there. So that's been added in for that. The parks contractual services are a little variant, but that's because we chose to move the Mount Baldhead fees to Oval Beach this fiscal year. Repairs for last year included the Village Square, so that's why there's a variance there. Equipment rental, that was what I was referring to. It's us renting our own equipment to ourselves so that we keep a fund for replacement. Well, if the guys aren't out working on the parks, then they're obviously not going to be using the equipment. So that's the variance there as well. And again, the capital outlay had Village Square in it and some of the initial Mount Baldhead work. The beach had the contractual services has professional grading. That's the variance there. And the education training, again, a leaner crew means we don't have to pay as much out in education. That's the CPR training, and there was a culinary something or other. Do you know what? Yeah. So that was in last year's as well. The printing is slightly off too because we moved to making the daily passes come with a sticky on them. It looks more professional, it's stuck better, and it, considering that we had a lot of people coming in, they needed those extra seconds. So that's in there as well. All right. Utilities are increased because of the Wi-Fi, the Starlink Wi-Fi that went in early season last year, but that's where it's hitting up there. Concessions, repairs, ice machine, plumbing and concrete repairs are in there. And the contractual services, Lexi took over doing the ice cream machine, right? So instead of paying a professional company to maintain it, we had somebody on staff that could do that for us. That's Oval Beach. What do you guys have for me?
I have a question for Scott. I noticed the salary and wages, as Nikki mentioned, were down quite a bit. Oval Beach, not so much, but under the general fund. Is that because you had challenges with staffing? And did you find that there was a need to increase that staffing for this year?
So yeah, Oval Beach staffing, you know, we did have more of a lean crew this year. You know, and when you start off, I'm pretty sure Councilmember Stanton probably deals with this too with businesses in the summer, but you know, you start off the year and you get commitments from people and you try to put availabilities together and whatnot, and people commit to a certain amount of hours. Well, you know, things can change pretty quickly in that arena. But so we felt like we were able to get the job done, especially too because we had a lot of repeat staff members coming back that already knew kind of what to do and what the job entails. So scaled back a little bit on Oval Beach as far as that goes.
I noticed you guys have been busy putting the sand back on the beach, and I want to tell you, I appreciate that, because I drove by there yesterday, and I noticed there's been a lot of work done
Thank
on
you.
that end. I know that's a non-stop job there, but you've done a great job keeping the parking lot clean.
I appreciate that. Yeah, the wind, we got the erosion control fencing installed. Everyone hates to see that stuff go up because it kind of signifies that summer's over, but it is very important, and the fall winds can get pretty strong. So we've seen days where the whole parking lot can get covered up with 8+ inches of sand overnight, if definitely. So yeah, if no more questions from Nikki, I'll kind of chime in from the oh, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. One question for Nikki. Back to slide 160. So the net contribution of the Oval Beach to the city's parks is the difference between the 874,114 and the 800,908. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Because we generally throw a number out there of about $100,000, and it's a little bit less than that, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I understand the numbers correctly. So that money is in theory usable for other parks improvements, Oval Beach.
That 800 actually is both the parks and Oval Beach.
It is,
I'm
okay,
Sorry if I
okay,
misunderstood your initial question. Yes, that 800,000 is both. If
okay.
you look at if you go one more down, you'll see these numbers matching the
Yep, I see it
874.
right there.
Yeah. So there's that. I do want to add, since you've brought it up, that I did not put the concessions in yet.
Okay,
I don't know if that's something we want to do, but it seemed like the number should be more pure as to parks, whereas concession isn't really, it's its own side thing.
yeah, I would agree just from probably an accounting standpoint, but I think from a just inclusive standpoint, it probably should be included because it's actually part of the operation at the beach.
I can
So-
update the graph for
Thank
next
you.
year. Do you want me to send it to you?
Yeah, I mean, just something that, I mean, nothing urgent, just, I think that should be inclusive. And as it's really hard to say because these numbers every year to year, I mean, we had the COVID years, which had a huge increase in our passes. As to why the 6,000, just shy of 6,000 increase in daily passes, and then the decrease in season passes, which you had mentioned. I don't know. I mean, the thing about the daily passes that gets my attention, and we'll talk about this, I think, in a moment, is that just indicates a huge increase in vehicles going into that park. I'm assuming that a daily pass means you're there for the day, but you may be going multiple times, but anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment, but that's what grabs my attention.
Yeah, and if I could just maybe add on the, the financial piece, it's obviously, there's a cost to go to the beach, but, I just really want folks to, see that obviously there's the operational costs that we have, but, the difference in the extra there, we're pouring, into, capital needs. So, as Nikki's showing you there, we have an expense that yet this year, but obviously we intend to, because the project's underway this calendar year. And in fact, the first bill should be in your packet on Monday, but, we have over $300,000 for the Wallhead restroom. That impacts that entire area, that entire, experience. And so, when we start paying for our capital costs, those dollars are being used, and, we're not just kind of making a profit off of them and just adding them to all these other general fund purposes. I mean, we're actually using them to improve, that experience there. And the other piece that's important to point out too would be that, like, obviously I have time into Oval Beach and overseeing these things. Nikki has a tremendous amount of time into doing these financials and daily checks on financials for Oval Beach and all the accounting and all the things and getting things into the bank. And none of her costs are included in here. So we have even more costs really that go into the beach that aren't necessarily here. But hopefully it gives you a good picture of the fact that, yep, we have some expensive operational costs out there, but we also have very expensive capital needs. In fact, the Mount Wallhead upper platform and the retaining walls and those things, that work that's slated, essentially these funds will also help pay for that as well. So that's a project that's coming up.
I wanted to thank the folks that had to do with the spending and of the concessions. If you look at last year and this year, we spent more to make less last year, only $608 profit out of that. And this year, over $19,000 by spending less money. So I really appreciate that. I like that turnaround.
Maybe a good segue to Scott to kind of talk about how things went. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ryan's spot on. We can't forget that these capital costs are pretty sizable. So, as I think John, Moxie, and Ryan and the team, we kind of start this time of year, start prepping for our capital improvements planning and some of our asset management inventorying. You start painting a picture of what all assets we own, and it all requires upkeep and staff and personnel time. So thanks for mentioning that, Ryan. But as far as the operation goes, you're spot on. I mean, last year we tried a lot of products in the concession stand. Profitability was maybe a little bit on the light side, but Linda, to her credit, Linda Boltman was the manager out at Oval Beach this year. She hadn't done it for about 5 years, but prior to taking a position elsewhere, she had managed the beach for about 10 years. And so having that wealth of knowledge coming back, and it was almost amazing how she knew the exact sizing of the Gordon Food Service cups to order for which, just absolutely every single detail for that concession stand. She kind of took it upon herself to go work with Warren over at Sisters in Ink and get some T-shirts ordered because people love their Oval Beach souvenirs. So she had success in that in the past, and that all contributed to higher sales volumes with less inventory. So to her credit, and to her credit for the beach overall, like I said, we were fortunate to have a large amount of people return from previous seasons this year again. And so leaning on that previous experience and also the great weather, were great contributors to our numbers this year. Lexi Bosch, she's a name that I have a lot of respect for because she has managed the concession stand for a number of years for us too. She's worked for the school systems by trade during the year, but wants a summer job, and she's come back this year, and man, she knows her stuff. That concession stand was super clean. She knows all the concentration mixtures for our sanitization chemicals and the heat temperatures to maintain for food product, and just really brings a wealth of knowledge for that. So I was really proud of her for doing that for us this summer. So Yeah, numbers looked good. Park cleanliness overall, of course, Public Works primarily focuses on the physical maintenance of the beach. So part of, those expenses too is, we groom the beach twice a week, Mondays and Fridays and after every storms. We've got Public Works staff going out there scraping sand off the parking lot and brooming it. And those activities require heavy equipment and quite a few hours to do so. So I thought the staff overall did a really good job. There's always room for improvement. We had some hiccups this year for sure. Frontier Communications, we have our phone lines that run our credit card machines out there, as well as our telephones, which our phones are a pretty critical piece to our safety policies out there, or procedures out there, I should say. So, we had Frontier go out quite a few times to help us out with some line repairs. But they've also, as everyone has seen downtown, we've also kind of started working with them and seeing the underground fiber installations throughout the city. So that fiber will be ran out to Oval Beach. And so along with that, for years to come, we have some great capabilities coming up in the future. So, and maybe try to get rid of some of these paper trails and try to lighten the load for our finance director and as well as public works staff and beach staff. But really, the main thing is that a lot of the hiccups that we're seeing out there, they stem around having that really solid foundation of a consistent beach manager. That is something that we've struggled to do in years past. The city's done things in a number of different ways. I remember Kathy Clade, she used to manage the beach for us only in the summer and didn't work at all for the city in the wintertime. She was a flight attendant. And that worked for a lot of years. And we kind of just use the staff resources, that human resource asset that we have, and use people's different skill sets to the best of our abilities. And then Linda, flash forward after Kathy, Linda actually worked for Kathy as a beach patroller, and she brought forth some more maintenance type skill sets. And so city management at the time decided to bring Linda on board, and she could kind of have this full-time position of the DPW/Oval Beach manager role. And she fit that kind of very unique bill very well for a lot of years. Since that, yeah, we've struggled. The two positions are different, to have that management level experience out at the Oval Beach, but then also those maintenance capabilities of that heavy equipment operation and all the things that we do over on the public works side. It's rare. One thing that I'm really leaning heavily towards is just trying to, when you have that beach manager role kind of turning over as frequently as we do, it kind of becomes a question of, we're retraining in a lot of different years, and just training alone to get the beach up and operational and set it up the way it is, it's a huge overhaul. And so it would really be massively beneficial to us, to get consistency in that role for sure. And then we can really start building on top of that. So one thing to in the meantime, until we have that, I would really like to maybe put it out there, push the leasing out the Oval Beach concession stand through an RFP. That way, public works staff and the Oval Beach staff out there can really focus on, that ticket booth, the revenue generation, beach cleanliness, and then making sure that we can implement those safety protocols when there's medical situations out there. So that would be a huge lift for us, because the concession definitely brings its own levels of complexities and hiring and staff resource. So that's kind of an overview from the operational side overall for 2025. So if anyone has any questions, by all means, here to help answer them.
Gregory?
That's
Okay,
what I wanted to say.
Okay. Russ?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Anderson. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Nikki and everybody for putting this information together. We're very lucky with Oval Beach. And I mentioned this to the city manager. I know we have on our list of priorities an Oval Beach strategy, and I think that's something that, based on some of the things you're telling us today, I know there's some infrastructure issues with the buildings. The actual concession stands themselves are how old?
We don't know exactly, probably 30 years.
And they're probably not state of the art in terms of concession abilities and so forth. And that definitely needs to be discussed. I don't know if it's on the CIP, but where I'm going with this is that, this beach appears on so many best of lists, right? It almost seems like second nature now, and I'd like to see us continue to make sure that that becomes something we see. And I think we, based on some of the things I'm hearing today, I'd like to have a conversation at the council level about maybe where we need to go with the beach, as Scott mentioned about the beach manager challenges, an RFP for the concession stand. I mean, there's a lot of different things that I think need to be discussed. Scott, has the management of the beach always been the DPW responsibility?
No, I mean, the DPW has always been heavily involved in it, certainly. But, like I said, I think really, Linda, utilizing the staff and their talents that they have in-house, we're such a tiny staff. I think that, it was kind of ran, seasonally, at times, but also too, when we get people that can kind of navigate both of those worlds, we'll definitely capitalize on their experiences with that. So
So the DPW superintendent has not been, or the DPW has not been responsible for the beach operations always.
yeah, I think, no.
Okay,
No.
when, do you know when that changed?
It was about, I think, 2020 or so.
Do you know why?
Again, I think it has to do with using what you've got, and when Linda, I don't know for sure is the answer, but I suspect that because we had a staff member that could navigate both of those worlds, it made sense at that time.
Okay. How has this impacted your department's ability to complete its core tasks? Because Oval Beach is an intense operation. How's it affected your team's ability to be able to do its core tasks, and you for that matter?
Well, it's a crown jewel, and I mean, this isn't a new thing that the city has overseen. Your question is how is Oval Beach?
How has it impacted because this hasn't been managed like this forever, how has it impacted your ability and your team's ability to be able to focus on its core tasks of the other things in the town that need to be taken care of with maintenance and operations and outside of the beach?
Well, obviously, Public Works in nature, we want to focus on infrastructure and, daily operations. So, our focus, maintaining, operations and improvement planning for the future too, right? So that's kind of what our core competency is, I guess, for us. So, it takes time for sure. It always has and it always will, but I mean, the revenues also are sizable too, so.
All right, thank you.
Corinne, you want
Yeah.
to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, having the Oval Beach, responsibilities under DPW certainly, was a change for the department several years ago. Scott and I have, talked about that. But I think, the city's done, various things to try to, kind of reconcile those changes that have been made, right? So, a few years ago, there was a, DPW part-time, administrative assistant role that was kind of shared with the clerk and split between those two. There was the DPW supervisor position added on, knowing that the superintendent was also kind of taking on a greater role in overseeing the beach pieces, and also had other, administrative things that he was starting to, take on and oversee as related to different projects. Then obviously we made a change, where we've, have Sarah, here, full-time, supporting, city hall functions, and now I have a full-time position, supporting, Scott as an administrative assistant and project coordination and that sort of thing. So certainly there's been some changes, and, when we met yesterday, Nikki, Scott and I, and kind of talked about where we're at and staffing and some different ideas. And so I think, look, we want to get this foundation, set. As your city manager, still think that, similar to the past two managers, feel that, Oval Beach being under the DPW umbrella still makes sense. Whether it's a hybrid position or trying to find somebody that does want to just do the summers, or there was another idea that we discussed yesterday and kind of changing up, the management structure or something along those lines. we want to work hard to get that foundation set. I think Scott had some more interviews today. We haven't touched base yet to see how those went to fill that position. Thought we had it filled not too long ago. Unfortunately, we just couldn't get the numbers to match with the person that made the offer, or we made the offer to. But we're committed to getting that foundation set, and I think once we can get some longevity in that position, that's going to help us really just continue to improve and enhance and make things better there. But in the meantime, I think Scott's, I don't know if you know this or not, he's taking some courses right now and kind of and learning the asset management responsibilities more and learning some really great skills to bring to the table. And we're working on getting some more solid data as it relates to the beach and a more solid plan together as it relates to like facilities out there. So you'll start to see some of that incorporated. We know we want to make some tech improvements.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think whether no matter who's overseeing that operation, we have a very small team of staff, and we're doing so many things that it's going to be a significant portion of somebody's position. And I think what in my opinion, just lightening that responsibility and making it a little more palatable for us. It's already a challenge in a lot of ways because it's holidays, it's weekends, it's working with a younger staff. We have an influx of staffing levels and people's availability. Like, for example, you'd hear things like, "Hey, I start football next week," and you're like, this is the first I'm hearing of it, and so, well, my schedule didn't come out yet. Well, you still knew you're going to do football this summer, but so there's a lot of stuff like that we deal with just as a seasonal community. But really, I feel very strongly that if we could at least explore the option, the numbers for the concession weren't, massive as far as the profits go. So, we have to start considering, I think this is where Ryan and I start kind of, putting our heads together a little bit and saying, is this optimal for our current staff resource level? And so, or would it make more sense if we leased out the concession, maybe try to capture, $10,000 or $15,000 of that $20,000 of revenue, and maybe that extra $5,000, $10,000 isn't worth the opportunity cost of what we could otherwise be spending our time doing. So that would seriously lighten the load. I mean, that concession with the ServSafe certifications and we are just offering not to downplay it. I mean, I think we do a pretty decent job, but we're also just servicing or selling Gordon Food Service products, and I think maybe some other people could do better, and that wouldn't offend me at all. So and ultimately that would result in better service to the beachgoers too, which is I think what we all want. But hopefully that answers.
Yeah. So in short, I think what Scott's saying, and I think I'm told him that I agreed that unless I hear any opposition from the council, I think, and we did this before, right? We put out a RFP to see if there was others that were interested in operating the concession stand. I think we're interested at least putting that out again, see what that pool of folks looks like, see if we get more proposals this time and interest. If not, then I think we, look at, what we need to do to prepare for next season. But I think if the council's at least supportive of it, I think, we'd like to at least put an RFP out. Let's take a look at who may be able to operate this. That's their bread and butter, what they do, still come up with something that, is financially workable for the city and allowing for that use of space to be used, but also be a win for the folks that are actually operating it too.
For sure. And I think when we pushed the RFP out before, one thing that we did is we really didn't have a lot of time on our side because we needed the beach to be up and operational. Right. So to be fair and give somebody an opportunity, I would think to put a decent business plan together is going to take every bit of 2 months, 3 months, something like that, I would guess, to put something meaningful, data-driven together. And product. The thing that we have going for us right now is we do have some time on our side, so we can, we're not in a position where we have to make any sort of panic decisions or, rush to get something done. That we really want to make sure that we have a good fit for that management role, and that we think this person is going to be, it's a time investment for us to train these folks too. And so we want to make sure that it's going to be pay dividends on that end of it too. So, but then we also have enough time that someone could put a decent business plan together to lease out that concession stand. So,
Well, thank you for walking this through with us today. And I just do want to say, we're going to miss Linda. I had several chances to talk with her as I went out to the beach, just to see the beach, and she just knows how to do it right, and she's going to be missed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, she's, yeah. Anyway, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the revenue and expenses through Q1. Nikki, thanks.
We are pretty well on track. I mean, we're a quarter of the way through the year, and the things that are more than 25% make sense. The taxes came in 95 to 98%, if you take a look at that. So that's pretty good. I did put out a delinquent tax bill for those who hadn't paid or who hadn't paid all of it. And we've had some response from that. The only other items to note, it's small, but the telephone, we ended up getting some new phones here in the office and at the DPW. So we upgraded that, and that's put all of the telephone over, I'm afraid. And the only large repair capital outlay we had was Public Works. I've got shop hose and valve. Do you know what you were fixing, Scott? It was Adam. What was Adam fixing? Stuff. Adam was fixing stuff. So that's what I got. Do you have questions? Okay.
That was my guess.
Yeah.
Just a comment, I would appreciate that. We see this every quarter like we're supposed to. So thank you, Nikki, for putting this together for us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Any questions before we get to investment update? All right, investment update.
And this one I have even less to talk about because it's pretty self-explanatory.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah. You got a summary on that page, and the next one is actual, where it's at. I've been making an effort to diversify just a little bit. Huntington handles that for us. So there's a new Goldman Sachs in there, and so that we're not breaching the 250,000. I'll be working through that. I will also be putting some of the tax money that came through into first class. I was just went on vacation, and so I'm gonna catch up from that, and then we'll get some of that overage that's in our checking account now into a higher interest making area. So that's it. Questions?
Yeah, on page, thank you, Nikki. On page 195, the general fund, the distribution of the CDs, we wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're at 9 different institutions. Is that by design, or is that?
A lot of that is where it was when I showed up.
Okay.
That's, and we continue to roll over because I want to keep that diversification. I want to keep the safety of the CD, but we also have quite a bit in first class, and we've got one treasury bill.
Yeah, my question is I agree, the diversification is important from an institutional standpoint. But 9 different banks, and that's what you inherited. So I'm just curious as to maybe what the thought process was buying this originally.
Probably the FDIC.
Yeah.
Anything over 250,000 isn't covered. So, and that's what I was referring to, is that,
Okay.
as you can see, the very top one, Macatawa Bank, was at close to 300,000, and I stripped off 70,000 so that interest wouldn't put us over 250,000, and ended up putting it into the Goldman Sachs CD. And I'm going to try to work through as they mature to do that, to keep us safe in that area. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to do though, because I mean, there's only so many banks, and as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tried the same thing with Interurban to try to keep under that FDIC at 250, and because we have several banks that we work with as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's an effort, but also being a municipality, there's very specific laws as to where we can invest our money.
Right.
And not every bank is available for that, and not every opportunity is available for that. So that's something that that I'm working on. And it could be that some of it ends up going into first class, just to keep the FDIC happy and yet not overwhelm us with banks and CDs.
Yeah, and I hope the big message and, for you as our council is that it's again, right? We've built up good fund balances and savings, trying to keep these things, those dollars, invested in safe ways, but in what we can invest, at least stay ahead of, inflation eating away and eroding those savings while we work to then put those dollars, those tax dollars actually to work. And I know we have a big budget this year, right? We talked about it during budget season, and the reason for that was projects, right? So your budget this year is bigger than last year, but we have the Maple Street project, we have the Mount Bald Head bathrooms, the Blue Star Trail projects included in there right now. So it looks like you're like, wow, the city's budget's so much bigger than it's been in the past. Well, it's because we're putting that capital work on projects, and we have to show it, obviously as an expense, even if we have offsetting revenue. So. But we have good fund balances, but as we all know, we have a lot of needs ahead that are going to need those dollars. And that's where all of you are key in telling us, hey, what do we prioritize and what do we want to spend those dollars on?
Our fund balance is a lot bigger than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, or a year
That's for
ago.
sure. Or a
Yeah.
year ago, so that says a lot too. And it's good to know that the money is being used for good things. So you're right, it is a big budget this year, bigger. And I've heard that from a lot of folks, out on the street. This is a lot more than you guys usually spend. And I think, like you said, Maple Road, that's a big one. The new bathrooms. So we've got more money coming in. We're saving more money, but we're also using more money for our taxpayers at the same time.
Great. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Nikki. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nikki.
That takes us to the National Geographic Location Release Form on page 196. Ryan?
Yeah, kind of a interesting opportunity for the city, and another recognition of one of our jewels. We had a representative on behalf of National Geographic that reached out that National Geographic and Pure Michigan are kind of working together on a project. They want to do some kind of filming on Mount Bald Head to kind of collect some B-roll footage. As part of that, National Geographic, I guess, is owned by Disney, and they want a release form, being such a large corporation. So legal's taking a look at the release form, so have I. Just a few pieces of note, in particular, the release at least, kind of protects us in that they're indemnifying us if they have some sort of negligence or willful misconduct. They're going to return the property to the same condition. They're not asking for any exclusive use of any areas, not asking for any city services. So this isn't something that necessarily needs like an event approval or anything like that. Because they're, filming, they want all rights to their, film and pictures in perpetuity. And then they do have some restrictions on publicity, and that, we can't go and say, hey, guess what? They're going to be here doing this project. We can't make public statements without them actually kind of giving us permission to do that. So I'm comfortable with the release, but the nature of it requires your approval. So that's why I'm bringing it to you.
Can you say when they're going to be there?
I think
They plan, or
I think they're looking at next week. Yeah.
Okay. So
But we
make
can't
sure I can try to
publicize
get
that.
out
Yeah,
there
that's
and
right.
Get in the shot.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Any questions? Okay, then that takes us to J, which is the use of chalk on sidewalk. Ryan's going to tee that up, and Jake is here as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So there's been a lot of talk, I think, around town, and we received some correspondence and here at City Hall, and calls on weekends to DPW. And so use of chalk on sidewalks has come up as kind of a community conversation, both in Douglas and in the city. I understand that there's some of you that are interested in discussing this topic, and maybe it'd be good, Mayor, if anybody else needs a break too. We have been sitting for a little while. So.
I wouldn't mind like a 3-minute break?
Could,
Could we do that or we don't?
I was hoping to get through
So
this.
moved.
Okay, let's
until-
get through this.
I was hoping to get through this until we ended up
Okay, let's
in
go.
closed session. I was just hoping.
Cool.
Okay, yeah, we'll continue. So, staff and legal have looked at, what our existing ordinances, kind of state and, ultimately, we've kind of put together a few different options for city council to, kind of consider and really give some feedback, because this is ultimately kind of a policy decision for you. And so we have Jake Whitty, our legal counsel, here via Zoom to kind of walk you through that, and, look forward to your direction.
Sure, thanks for teeing that up, Ryan. So there are, I guess, starting with what the status quo is, the city code does not really speak clearly to this kind of activity. And some other considerations for the council is that, inscribing messages on city sidewalks, that is a form of expression that is protected by the First Amendment. That does not mean that people have a unlimited right to engage in activity. There's certainly limits that the council can put on it if they want to, but really that's a policy decision. So in approaching this, I think there's really kind of three different ways the council could go about this issue. The first would be to just not regulate this at all. That would probably be the easiest approach in a lot of senses, because it would not require any administrative burden in picking and choosing what's allowed or on the enforcement end. I think the downside there is you don't have any control whatsoever over what is written on sidewalks in chalk. A second option would be to just prohibit it outright. And I think administratively, we could develop some ways to do that depending on the council's direction. But that is going to be another relatively straightforward approach that the council could take. The third option would be to apply some kind of permitting scheme where you would require administrative approvals. And this could also be accompanied by specific regulations relating to, the time, place, and manner in which sidewalk chalk messages could be made. I think and within this context, I would probably encourage a more content neutral format where basically, we would be saying, again, but not these are the kind of messages that are okay or not okay. If the council is really inclined to take, I think, an aggressive approach with respect to the level of control it wants to exercise over, inscriptions on the sidewalk, we could possibly explore options for almost approaching this as a form of government speech and having a kind of increased amount of oversight to some extent on the messages themselves. But I think anything involving permitting or administrative review is probably going to be so much of a burden that someone, writing in sidewalk chalk would either just say it's not worth the trouble or they just wouldn't comply. So I don't know if you guys have any specific questions from my end, but otherwise those are the three general options that I think are available to the city at this time.
So Jake, just a clarification. So we're essentially now at the, we don't prohibit it unless it's malicious or destructive. I can't remember the specific word.
Yeah, so and you're talking about, there's a section of the city code that speaks to malicious destruction of property.
Right.
And that generally prohibits people from maliciously like defacing or vandalizing city property. And that's something that Ryan and I went over when this issue was raised the first time. And my office's assessment is it's, I think, a bit of a gray area as whether something that is very temporary and it's just, basically going to wash away the first time it rains, like sidewalk chalk. It's debatable whether or not that would constitute defacing city property. But I think the bigger hurdle there is proving some kind of malice, because it's not just a prohibition on defacing public property, it's a prohibition on the malicious defacing or destruction of public property. And looking to some of the state law analogs that are out there, normally malicious destruction of property requires some kind of intent to damage or destroy, which, again, given the very temporary and non-permanent nature of sidewalk chalk, that's something that I think would be difficult to prove from a prosecution standpoint.
And then one other point, and then Gregory, and under our current ordinance, there's nothing that prohibits somebody. So say Gregory put something in chalk on the sidewalk and I don't like it. Nothing prohibits me, Holly Anderson, citizen, not a city council person, from taking a bucket of water and a scrub brush and brushing it off. That's correct?
Yeah, I don't think, again, I mean, there's not really anything in the city code that speaks to it, and people can't really, claim some kind of possessory right for the, public property, which is a sidewalk. So yeah, I don't think there's anything that speaks either way in the city code.
Got it. Gregory.
First of all, Holly, I'm a very good artist.
Well, I know, and I would actually probably want to spray a fixant over it so that, we just.
Over the years of putting on events here in town, having a store in town, and then, I would, I had a spot in front of Del Sol and say, "Where are you from?" ? And people would say, they'd write their different places where they were from. Different events that I used to do, like the Wool Fest, or different events that I've done over the years. We've had sidewalk chalk, for the kids to, have fun with. And during COVID, I drew a big Easter bunny, if anybody remembers, and I shared on social media Easter eggs all around town, because that was when the town was closed. So a lot of my friends would come downtown just to get for a walk, to go outside. That was recommended at that time, to go look at all the cute little Easter eggs everywhere around town. First time I thought that sidewalk chalk was ugly was when I walked out my front door, and we have some kind of band that uses children's instruments and that plays there sometimes, and they just had so much writing all over it, and I thought to myself, golly, that's just so ugly, I didn't really pay attention to what they were writing. It was just a mess, and people walking on top of chalk, and just, and then me walking into my home after walking on chalk, and walking chalk up my stairs and inside my home. And then noticing what has happened here in town, more chalking, and not so much what was being said, but it made me realize how dirty it made the sidewalks look, how ugly it was, whether it was words or whether somebody just went, with black chalk everywhere, or just scribbled everywhere in black chalk. I just thought it was unsightly. So I was really curious about it. I saw it, I took a couple of pictures about it, and there were several people that posted about it online, and I posted about it, explaining that it didn't matter, about the message. I just thought it was unsightly. And then that Friday evening, later on, I had people that came up to me, called or messaged, and felt the same way. So it prompted me to go to the Douglas meeting, which was Monday night, to see what they had to say, because I was curious. I believe in free speech. Believe me, everybody knows I've got a big mouth. So it's not, to me, it's not about those issues that some people might think it is and might bring into this conversation. Which I have seen, people bring that into the conversation about content. I don't think this is about content. I think it's about, after watching, the Douglas meeting, they recited, their ordinance on malicious destruction of public property that reads just like ours, and I'm gonna read it. It shall be unlawful for any person within the city to maliciously destroy, comma, damage, comma, injure, comma, mar or deface any building. So the way that I read this and the way that I understood that most people, 6 out of 1 or 6 out of 7 of the council folks read this as a defacing or marring, not as a maliciously defacing building, monument, sign, notice, or structure. What kind of I brought, this to mind was thinking, well, golly, how, is this going to be a trend? Are we gonna see more of this? Are there other public places that people might be able to think, well, hey, if I can color this, maybe I can color that, So I think that was my concern too, is like, now that this seems to be getting a lot of attention, are we gonna see more of it? No matter what it is, the Easter eggs, whatever it is. Again, that doesn't matter. So I don't know where I stand on this, because of course I believe, and I don't really want to change the ordinance. I like it where it's at, So I've gone back and forth about how I feel about this. But I have to say, after watching the Douglas City Council and how their lawyer interpreted the ordinance, which is written almost verbatim how ours is, I thought that was a good point. And I was really curious to hear what the rest of our council members thought about how they define, because as our lawyer knows and other lawyers know, the big part of law is interpretation of it. And I can, many lawyers will have different ideas what an interpretation is. So I'm more really curious about what everybody else's interpretation of this is. And again, going to Douglas and having conversations with Kathy North and all the folks on board there, Randy and everyone else about this. I was just curious about what everybody else thinks about this. Again, let me point out that it doesn't say anything about permanent or temporary defacing. It doesn't say anything about chalk versus paint or something that might wash off in the rain, or something that could be easily washed off. So they're again trying to define the word malicious and trying to say that maliciously destroy. Does that mean maliciously damage, maliciously injure, maliciously mar, maliciously deface? I see the comma separating maliciously destroy, damage, comma, injured, comma, mar, comma, deface. And that is clearly defacing a sidewalk. And not in the legal sense, but in the whatever legal definition of deface might be different than Webster's dictionary, but it is changing the face of city property. So I see that as defacing, and I feel that maybe perhaps that might fall under defacing, whether it be temporary or permanent. So.
Jake, do you want to weigh in just from a lawyer's perspective, the sentence structure, if maliciously does define all of those words, or is that?
Yeah, so that would be my opinion, is that a malicious act is required for any of the verbs that are in that sentence. I mean, some of it, I think the code there is titled malicious destruction of property. And then some of it too is looking at state law analogs. And there's pretty similar statutory language out there that has been analyzed by courts. The state has, and I think one example in particular that I looked at was that malicious destruction of property requires a specific intent to damage property or to injure its owner. And so I don't necessarily know that I would read in that just by defacing something without any kind of malice, that this would be a provision of the city code that you'd be violating from the standpoint of, the city attorney's office. That would be something that I think would be challenging to enforce and challenging to get buy-in from a judge. And maybe from a policy perspective, I would also note that there's a lot of provisions of the city code that are punishable by civil fines, like through the civil infraction process. The city's malicious destruction of property provision is not one of them. So that means it's a misdemeanor. It's punishable by up to $500 or 90 days in jail or both. So I think, it's, I'm not going to say that it's, outlandish or even necessarily incorrect to say, maybe there's a situation where someone drawing with sidewalk chalk could violate this section, but I don't necessarily know that it is the best mechanism for the council to enforce a prohibition on this kind of activity, if that's what they're inclined to do.
Joe, why don't we just maybe kind of go around the room, since I think Gregory got off with a good start, kind of providing his perspective. Joe?
I appreciate Jacob's insight, and where my head was going as I listened to Gregory, Councilman Muncy, was, as I listened right there, there's almost like a subjective overlay that says acceptable, not acceptable. And I think as a city council, we need to be very, very careful, right, to get into that realm.
Sure.
And applying, a malicious destruction act or something against, I know you're saying it's not based on.
It could have happened to me if I did the eggs that year, or if I had in front, in front of that store. So, that's what I said. I don't know how I feel on it one way or the other. That's why I want the perspective here.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't take it, because I think it summarizes a legal perspective that to me seems pretty clear that we want to avoid that type of thing if we can, right? So I think, it always comes back to what problem are we really trying to solve here, right? I mean, I understand that, talking this over the last few days upset a lot of people, and has it happened a lot in this town? I don't know. Doesn't seem like it's been a big problem, but nevertheless, can it continue to become a problem? I don't know. That's something we need to consider.
A lot of businesses do it too.
They do.
Little arrows pointing to their places and, different things like that.
And the first thing that kind of went through my mind was, last year, I would walk my dog every day, right? We always kind of cut up Main Street, up the path in between there. And last year there was artist, poet, somebody, put these wonderful drawings out there. And so you walked up the sidewalk, very colorful flowers. There were like, little ditties about going out and the health of going out and having a wonderful day, and just things that generally feel good, right? Kids, whether they're local kids or tourists coming with families, are always out putting, hopscotches on the sidewalks and what have you, and things like that. And I'd hate to see us get to get to that point where we felt like we needed to call it out, right? And to me, this is even an all or nothing thing. I don't, right now, I'm not comfortable going down the path of starting to structure ordinances, start walking around, the whole issue of content, right? And, which gets us clearly smack dab in the middle of, potential issues, First Amendment issues, right? I think we should go with that. It wouldn't be responsible for us, and I know you all agree with that, to get into a situation like that. So, my gut's kind of telling me to let this one go, and see what happens, and just kind of monitor the situation.
Mhm.
I don't want to penalize the people that are truly being artistic and helping our community by expressing themselves. The chalk, right? I mean, that's, again, I'm careful, trying to be careful there, because I don't want to try and jump right to a conclusion without kind of listening to everybody, but that's kind of where my head's at right now. And you know, the other side of this is people are gonna express themselves no matter what, right? But we say no chopping, it's, me, it's whack-a-mole, now what, whack-a-mole, now whether it's controversial or not, right, you're gonna see an expression come out in other means, right? The ability to have chocolate, you can kind of wash off and they go away, does anybody come walk up and do it if they're offended? To me, does it seem like a bad thing? Anyway, that's kind of where, you know, kind of my unstructured thought process is going through this whole, so.
Yeah, I would just say the hard part is, you know, it is subjective. What people, some people are offended by and what people find beautiful, what people find ugly, what, you know, that some people feel is defacing, where others find artistic. It's very subjective. And because it does wash away, I feel good with leaving it as it is. And yeah, I wanted to hear from our attorneys, and, you know, Holly and I had spoken to our attorneys before this even happened to find out, you know, where the city stands as far as malicious destruction of property, and what defacing is, and what we can, you know, what we can, you know, based on what our ordinance already says about malicious destruction of property, what that looks like. And it seems very gray. So that's why this is challenging. It's a challenging issue. But yeah, I guess that's where I'm at as far as just leaving it as is. If it became like a bigger problem where there was profanity involved or anything like that, then that's an easier one to deal with. So.
Yeah, as I said from the beginning, I have no interest in changing the ordinance or adding any amendment. I just wanted to know, and I did not know the lawyer's opinion until today.
Yeah.
So I just really, and after going to Douglas meeting and seeing how they dealt with it, I just wanted to know what everybody here felt about it as well.
Great. Russ?
Yeah, thank you. So when Jan Cohen was here at the last September 8th meeting and in comments said that there was going to be, she didn't go into detail about the message. By the way, let me start by saying I am 100% supportive of our First Amendment right to free speech and the right to assemble. That's critical. So I just want to make sure, and as Councilmember Clark said, I don't think anybody can disagree with that it's my responsibility as a citizen to support your right to express your opinion, because I have the same right. But having said that, when Jan came and she made her comments and she did not go into detail about the message that she told us she was going to put chalk on the sidewalks. I went back and I looked at the comments, and the message that was given to her was from the mayor to talk with the city manager after the meeting to discuss what was going to take place. What was the content of that discussion? What was she told she could do or couldn't do? Which was.
Yeah, I mean, I talked with her that evening and told her I would do some research to see if we had any, you know, prohibitions against, you know, chalking on sidewalks. And I told her that, or emailed her that we didn't have something that clearly indicated that she couldn't chalk on sidewalks. I told her that there was a clear prohibition on like obstructing the sidewalk to, you know, like people obviously could walk through and that sort of thing. But that's what I told her, and obviously they chose to.
Okay. They have an event scheduled on Friday, I believe, in front of City Hall, a right to assemble. They have the right to do that. And they've also put out a message regarding what they plan to do around town to have specific, I don't know if everybody's seen this, but specific sidewalks dedicated to certain messages. So one block is going to be to put messages of support for LGBTQ+ rights, healthcare rights, some other topics that they've chosen to write on our sidewalks. The content is not my concern. What's concerning to me, and again, I think I share Councilmember Muncie's kind of concern about this, and maybe not concerned, but I don't know which way to go on this, because I support their rights to tell us what their positions are on this, but as a council member and as a person responsible for the maintenance and control of our city assets, of which the sidewalks are part of it, you know, where is that point at which you say, you know, we can talk all day about what mar or damage or injure or maliciously destroy means from a legal standpoint. But at what point do we say, you know, we have the ability to control how our city property, our citizens and taxpayer city property is used and how it's maintained? I don't know if I'm clear on how, if that is clear, at least not clear in my mind, because we control the rights to signs. We control the rights to access various city properties. We control the city hall. You can't write on the side of city hall. That would be deemed to be probably not the best use of the city hall, right? If someone were to write on the side of city hall, even if it was in chalk. So I think the material is less important to me than the action itself. And that's where I'm struggling at this point and I'm still, you know, just kind of thinking through my head about what's appropriate. And I'm not saying I'm against what they're saying, I'm against the action. And I think if you are a visitor to this town and you were to walk into town and you walk past a restaurant, there's someone written on chalk, "Don't eat here." What does that tell you? That tells you one person's opinion, but is that an appropriate use or action for the use of city-owned property? Actually, a community-owned property. So that's the struggle I'm having is I support your right to have your opinion about you don't want to eat at the restaurant, but is it your right to actually write it on a city-owned property that you shouldn't eat there? And I just use that as an example because that was given to me. That's where I'm still struggling with this. And
When the CVB had the stickers that for the social district, did you have to ask permission from the city to add those? Okay.
yeah, and I think about the rainbow crosswalks out in front of City Hall here. When that was first proposed, that came to City Council as a request to have that done. As far as I know, that was one request that was approved by City Council, and they've not come back for additional requests for that. So again, I'm thinking out loud here about what the city may be able to do if it's a planned event, like that was planned event last week and one that's coming up Friday. I think that's different than the serendipitous of people. And as a matter of fact, I got a text message from one of the people that put chalk on that sidewalk last summer with the Walt Whitman poem. I love that.
Yeah.
It's serendipity. It's not a planned event.
Mhm.
If a child puts a hopscotch on the sidewalk, right? We all did that. Do it on our driveway and private property. Private property is aside the point. I'm talking about the public right of way. I don't want to discourage people from feeling though they can't do something like that. But if it's a planned event, I think that's a different situation. If you're using our park, if you're using our sidewalks for a protest, then we have the right. I mean, we do this all the time, as I just mentioned. We have the right to say how city property can be used.
I think what's
Not the content, but the actual action itself. That's kind of where I am on it.
So what's tricky with that is there was a planned event last Friday night, but it was from a different group than the group that did the chalking. So, I don't know.
Which was an event application that was approved by the city, not the message, but the use of the city property for their event.
But that wasn't, the people who chalked didn't
Oh, I
have
know.
anything to do
Right.
with that.
Oh, I know that.
So, yeah, I think, I mean, like everyone here, huge believer in our First Amendment rights and rights to assemble. And this is completely beside the point, but it's such a weird thing. I mean, I just looked at the voting record for the last presidential election and the Democratic candidate got, it's like 50% more votes than the Republican candidate. I mean, Saugatuck and Douglas are very sympathetic to pushing back on the current federal administration's actions, related to democracy. So it's sort of like, why are we like, I don't know what is being solved for with the chalking because I think most people support their concerns about some of the issues going on in the government. So I don't think they're winning support, and I think probably they're hardening opposition. Be that as it may, it just sort of feels like we allow it or we don't. I mean, I'm totally against anything that would put an administrative burden on the staff or on council. I just don't think it's a good use of our time or staff's time to try to monitor it. I think, especially staff's time. I mean, I don't think it's fair to them. I am concerned. I mean, I don't want to lose the Walt Whitman phrase, Russ, that you just referenced. I got that same text. Or Gregory's Easter bunnies. And I also don't want to get, I don't want to put ourselves in a spot where we became a test case for,
Right.
So, so I guess I'm inclined to, like others have said, see where this goes. Because I don't know how we can shut down one without then saying you can't chalk our sidewalks. Yeah.
Well, one thing to be clear is that for anybody that's here listening, no decision is being made today.
Yeah. We're just,
Okay, this is an open
Just a
discussion.
discussion,
There's no
right.
decision being made. Two is I think we need to be a little careful because, and again, the chalk is even beside the point for me. The materials don't really matter to me. It's the action. And it's the impact that it has on our public infrastructure, in this case, the sidewalks. We have to be prepared in this day and age that you may very well see messages on the sidewalk that are counter. I mean, we're a nonpartisan
Absolutely.
council, so
Yeah.
we have to be prepared for.
That was one of my biggest concerns from seeing a lot of this, as well. Was seeing that, seeing disruption in our city, inviting counter.
Yeah.
And seeing that as well. My biggest concern to me, it was like I said, if it was just scribbling and now I've got chalk on the bottom of my shoes and I'm dragging into my house, really it's a mess. But Holly, you brought up the message, and how, and you're right, our percentage here is, we live in a liberal democratic town.
right.
You're absolutely right about that.
So in my mind, that makes this a strange place to make a stand. It's like, okay.
Right.
I
that's
think
true.
you got Saugatuck.
But then I don't want it to incite,
Backlash.
their opposite group, and so I just don't want to see that happen. And that's another part of this that I would hate to see.
So this Friday event, if it happens, according to the screenshots I got, there's been no request to do that. There's been no one that has notified council or the city manager that this is going to be taking place. They're going to be assembling out in front of City Hall, which is their right to do. But they're also going to be doing this other event with more organization around the sidewalk chalk. So that's going to happen. The city has, at this point, our ordinance doesn't stop this. Our ordinance doesn't, there's nothing that, there's no request, so this is just, and they've announced they're going to do it,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I think the instruction that I've given at least to our staff and share with our law enforcement at this point is that unless there's actual damage and there's
Mhm.
provable ill will or malice, that
Okay.
chalking is permitted, unless the city council, you all make a decision that you want something clearly prohibited, which you can do. We can work on some language in your ordinance, in an ordinance format to do that. I mean, some of this will naturally be a discussion of the planning commission as they're looking at maybe sign ordinances and content neutrality there and whether or not, some of this could come up through that discussion, right, naturally over the next several months, but.
Well, if this comes to pass, expect another exciting weekend of sidewalk chalk and messages.
Yeah, and again, reminding folks that, it's as citizens of this community, it's our right to, wash it off or, again, not a burden for city staff, but, the right is there for everybody. And I know that happened, Gregory. I think you posted, last weekend that somebody, washed off.
I didn't, somebody.
But
that
somebody you
walked
knew,
up did.
yeah.
I didn't post anything about that. I
Again,
certainly
not
didn't
wanting
post
to-
anybody's name or anybody's organization. I expressed the fact that I didn't like it because it was ugly. I will say, Douglas, after the meeting there, during the meeting, their officials said that it costs them $500 every time to clean up their sidewalks. And we just thought that was quite an amount. You know, everybody kind of looked at each other in the room and thought, wow, that's a lot of money to have a sidewalk wash. Yet it was said. After there was a storm during the meeting. And after the meeting, we went outside and we literally, it was a very calm discussion, relatively calm discussion. Amicable, you know, but outside the sidewalks were all washed off because they had written this group that is very prominent in doing this activity. Had written all over in front of the city hall, and afterwards there was a storm. And you couldn't see any more of it. I mean, the rain came down pretty hard on Monday, if you remember. The police chief came out after the meeting, and I did make a comment to him. I said, "Look, the city of Douglas just saved $500." So it was. The meeting was very amicable. The group was told to settle down a couple because they got kind of riled a little bit, a little talking in the background, and might have stood up and spoke when it wasn't their turn. But it was a very amicable meeting, very peaceful meeting that they had about it.
I'm going to send these screenshots to the city manager. I'm assuming you have not gotten any of this information. I got 2 screenshots. One is for Chalk Drop with Good Trouble Indivisible, Saugatuck, Michigan. Time Friday, October 10th, 6:30 to 8:30. Location Saugatuck Town Hall, 102 Butler. Then is this something you've even been notified of?
I had somebody the other day that sent me a link to an event that there was some chalking planned for this weekend. I
Okay.
didn't.
And then there's another screenshot that was given to me about what the event actually is going to, which I mentioned some details about what's in here, and I'll forward this to you just so you have it. My only suggestion would be is that we just make sure that we make it a safe event for people visiting as well as the people participating, so we don't have any confrontations. It might be something just to bring
Right.
to the,
Well, and I do think if it sounds like it's an event, then that becomes, the vigil at Wicks Park last Friday
Mhm.
was an event. And so we went through the process, and if somebody's, yeah.
looks like an event to me.
So,
I'll send this to the city manager so he can have this for information. So, thank you.
I'm not getting the sense that we need to talk about this further at this point.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, good discussion. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for bringing it up. I know I contacted you, Holly, our manager as well, that evening, Friday evening, sharing the same pictures that I shared online. And I appreciate the discussion because I really wanted to hear what everybody else thought.
Yep. Okay, well, then we'll get to the second public comment period, and then we'll take a quick break before closed session. Hello, Jane.
I know if you're like me, you want to pee, so I'll be brief. 2 things.
Name.
I'm sorry, Jane Dickey, Jane Dickey. Okay. I'll say it anyway. I'm Saugatuck Township. I just wanted to make clear to you, and I think probably most of you know, that there are 2 different indivisible groups in our little thing. And as my husband once said, it looks like you are divisible after all. But one is Good Trouble with Jan heads up, and the other is Saugatuck Douglas Area Indivisible. That's this one. We did not do the chalking. We intentionally made decisions not to do it, and we won't do it in the future. And the main reason is that free speech usually involves the person standing there speaking, and you see the person who owns what they're saying. When they're standing there with a sign, you see the sign, and you see the person, and they are owning their sign, they're owning their statement. The chalking leaves the public believing that that particular business owner wrote that or believes that. Most people honestly don't know that the sidewalk is in fact public property. They assume that whatever is on that sidewalk, the business owner. And the last time it happened, I had to go to a couple of folk and say, look, we didn't do that. And if we do ever decide to chalk, we would ask the business owners, this is what we're going to put in front of your store, even though it's public property, even though it's owned here. So The uncertainty of that is what made us decide as an organization not to do the chalking, because we want to see our towns flourish. And when they flourish, we all do well. We want to see vibrant democracies. And it's been fun to sit here and watch you for the last couple hours. And you heard me say this at the Douglas meeting probably, because this is what democracy looks like. You know, you don't necessarily always all agree, you have differences of opinion, and that is exactly where this should happen. Democracy is messy. It means humans write laws and humans can change laws. So as you're thinking about your ordinances, you're thinking about, should we tweak them? Should we make them more fair? And it's been really good to see that. The second thing I wanted to mention was the vigil, because I wanted to really compliment this town and especially Scott and the way that we worked together to make everything work, to get the banner hung up, you know, and it took extra time. He 15 minutes more in this workday, and he got his crew out there and he got it up. The ease with which we were able to fill out your forms and get permission and think ahead about what we do with our safety committee, which we had on hand. There were, when I counted in a moment, 160 folks at that vigil. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, because people did bring their own candles. And so I looked, you know, you could look out and people had candles. We celebrated what's good about our communities, about our lives, about democracy, about each other, and the essentialness of being kind. That's going to be a basic part as we move forward in this country, I think. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you for the way you functioned, the way you worked. The facility in Wicks Park is beautiful. The lighting, we did have one disabled person. It would be lovely, you might consider this, to put a ramp that can get people up to that, so that it's accessible. But in any event, any event, I just really, really love living here, love Saugatuck, and thank you all for showing me what democracy looks like. And I'm going to give you all a little indivisible card that tells you what we stand for, what the Saugatuck Douglas area indivisible stands for. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Anyone else in the room? Bobby?
Bobby Gond. Great meeting. A little long. But great meeting. And I especially appreciated the last discussion, and as well as the work you're putting into parking. I really appreciate that approach in terms of bringing what sounds like a great consultant in to work this through with all of us. As you all know, no surprise, we've been talking about this for years, as Russ indicated, and I think considering what your approach is, I mean, we're either going to do something about it or we're going to say, we don't have to do anything about it. But I think that the way you're approaching it is really smart. And as a taxpayer and a lover of Saugatuck, thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Lisa Mize. I'll be quick. 3 things. In the discussion about Oval Beach, congratulations on the success of Oval Beach. It's an amazing asset for the entire area. But Russ was making a suggestion earlier about really looking at the Oval and the concessions and everything that goes into that. If possible, I would love to have input from the CVB as we have shoulder season initiatives that involve Oval Beach and a potential new revenue stream. Second, just to give you a quick update on the warming station situation, we are meeting with the designer and from Belden Brick next Wednesday, the 15th, and I hope after that meeting, shortly after that meeting, to have a design for you to look at. And finally, please, just as your friendly reminder to come Saturday for the ribbon cutting. I know Mayor Anderson plans to be there, but Flower World, if you haven't had a chance to go see it yet, It looks so cool and so fun, and I can't wait to see it at night. Someone did take a picture of it and sent it to me, and they even light up and glow at night, and it's all from solar power, which is super cool. So I'm excited for Saturday, 6 to 8. All kinds of fun will be had. Cider and donuts from Cranes, a DJ, all kinds of things that glow and fire. So, and balloons that also glow. And your cup for cider will glow. So please join us.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Anybody else, anyone online wish to speak? All right. With that, we need a motion. Should we, need a motion to go into closed session, and then we can just take a 5-minute break.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to 15.243H to discuss material exempt from public discussion and disclosure under 16 USC 470HH.
I'll second.
Roll call vote?
Anderson.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Gardner.
Yes.
Muncy.
Yes.
Stanton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yes.
I couldn't come up with point. I was
All right, we are back in open session, and we are at council comments. Russ, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll wait until the city manager comes back up. I just have a quick
Right there.
comment. About the Flower World, excited to see the kickoff of this weekend. I did get, and I emailed the city manager, I got a question from the Singapore Yacht Club about that the Cook Park was deeded to the city or donated to the city with the stipulation that there was to be no development in Cook Park. So I was able to tell them that this is a temporary installation. So it just reminds me that we need to be careful that we're sure that we're communicating clearly with our neighbors. And I was able to do so in this case, and Brian helped me out, but we need to make sure that people understand this is a temporary exhibit. It will be removed in March of next year. So.
Lauren?
I have nothing further.
All right, Gregory?
I'd like to thank everybody at the DPW staff last week for helping decorate the town. On Monday, a week ago last Monday, they distributed to 40 corners, straw bales, corn, and also the sign, the front sign, or 3 signs, now 2.
Right,
Um,
RIP.
Yeah, and as soon as all of the ads are out, are done, like next week, I'll be able to go out there, kind of fix everything up, because I had to go around them. But I wanted to thank them all for that, and everyone else that helped with that, including Clayton Cottages, Better Homes and Gardens, who donated for the materials, as well as all the volunteers, including Jim Babcock, Leah Root, and a lot of community members that we know here in town that do other things that serve our community. It was a fun event. Also had a great time, my traditional lunch with the guys at the DPW. After fall decoration, I always buy lunch, and it was nice to sit down and talk with those guys and about the decorations in town. And they always have a lot of fun helping out with that. So just wanted to thank them all for that. And then, look forward to the flower show. I think it's coming together very nicely. So, I hope it's a neat little exhibit. You know, I had friends at first, that said, what's going on? And when they saw some of the renditions, they didn't think that it was that pretty, but now that it's up, they've agreed it is kind of neat. So, and it is temporary, right?
You approved it as a temporary installation. I think when they created the structures, I mean, it's something that they could approach us and say, hey, are you willing to buy this,
Right.
want this
I
here,
think
or
they
want it
said
somewhere
that
else?
at the
Yeah.
beginning, that
Yeah.
that might be an offer. So that might be something that, you know, we'd have to put into some light consideration, considering what I've just heard from Russ with our agreement with that. So that's it.
Joe?
I just want to thank Council Gardner for calling me out on my comments regarding parking in past councils. It was not my intention to suggest that nothing had been done, so my public speaking includes high degrees of insensitivity. I think I just demonstrated. On the contrary, I uphold utmost respect for past councils, and having sat in this seat now for a year, that respect has actually gone up even more. So I just want to point out that it's a problem that just keeps coming back.
Right.
And if we have an opportunity to get a good roadmap out there, I think we should jump on it and hopefully help out future councils as well. So thanks for calling me.
Thank you.
Nothing for me. So how about a motion to adjourn?
I'll have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.